back again, and we're with Isaac. But I'll let Isaac explain exactly who he is and what he does. So, Isaac, come on in. What do you do? What's the story? What's the story, man? People want to know. People want to know.
Hello, Vinny. My name's Isaac Diaby. I like to consider myself like an entrepreneur in basically Scotland.
Yeah.
I'm basically one of the owners of Schooling and Project Best App as well. And currently studying ethical hacking at Aperture Uni. So.
Yeah, madness of a course, that ethical hacking. Basically, me and Isaac, I mean, when did we actually meet? I mean, this is our first time face to face.
Yeah.
But we first spoke on the phone, I think it was during a break I had when I was working that security gig last summer, I want to say. And then we met, like, we were on the phone in it because you wanted to launch that event. Well, obviously, it was kind of Corona time.
It was kind of funny how even that happened because I wanted to basically sell for a Project Best App event, summer beach party, and it was going to be insane.
It's going to be mental. I mean, it was, the day itself.
It was going to be insane.
Yeah.
But obviously with the thing is, it's like I needed more DJs and like people that actually knew the thing. So one of my friends told me that I should have basically reached out to you.
Yeah. That's how it happened. Yeah. And then that was actually a really good summer. I think it was so close to working. Like, it was so close to working
until we figured out like,
there was a lot more details that were like pretty like easy to miss.
I mostly feel like it was basically because of the numbers coming, because
the numbers coming were a bit mental.
We had literally over 3,000 people already.
Yeah, 3,000 people coming
tickets
to the event,
all across the UK. So.
Yeah, that would be mad. I was looking forward to it though.
So was I. Like,
I didn't know what to expect though, because I knew like police probably wouldn't have been that happy with it.
Oh no.
Like, especially when the fact that they didn't reply to you though wasn't great. Like, if they'd replied to you early, I guess you could have been like, I don't want to. There's no point in me doing this. Like, you know what I mean? But they didn't say anything, so it was a bit like.
Exactly. One of the main issue was mostly because like basically they waited until later on before telling me. So I had an email from basically Edinburgh head of police. He even messaged me, and then I had to then go for a back and forth with him, and then had other people with licensing and like what's called public entertainment people trying to like tell me, okay, you need a license for this, XYZ. Even on top of that is like coronavirus, so it's like you can't do it anyways. This spell was literally going to be 3 more days until the restriction got lifted. So
mental, really close as well. But I mean, it was so close. I mean, this year though we'll go big. I think if you're keen. Well, if things are keen, if things work out as well, you know what I mean, we can really go for it. And man, it can't be good to chat to you finally about like this whole like
actually getting it made up. Like
I mean, I think it's perfect. I think you in the community are like a pillar almost at this point, where it's like you've like commended like you know what I mean, getting 3 to 4K people to show up to your event is no small thing. I think with like you know what I mean, just word of mouth as well. Like no. Like, you know what I mean? It was all word of mouth that I felt at the time. Like, it was just a few of us sharing it, and then people were like, oh, this is going down. This is happening. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's sick. And it's mental. But,
like, there was definitely, like, a team behind it as well. Like, I can't take the credit for myself.
No, 100%.
A lot of planning went into it, like, some contract deals as well with, like, the people at the, like, Portobello Beach as well.
Yes.
So it didn't, like, at the end of the day, it was still beneficial because we still got the deals in place for like next time as well. So
of course, you signed the deal with the beach house at Portobello, didn't you? Is that still continuing?
The boat house.
The beach house.
Is it the boat house? I should probably check that.
No, it is the boat house. It's the one at Porty.
Okay, no, because I know for a fact that there's basically 2. There's the boat house and the beach house, both on the stretch.
Beach house.
Yeah. So I went to the beach house like before.
Right.
It would have been the boat house. It's definitely the boat house.
The boat house is the one at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, the boat house is the one at the end. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's class, man. Smashing it there though. So as a BAME student, you know, a BAME entrepreneur, like, how have you like handled like racism like throughout like your daily life? I know it's some people like aren't experiencing it daily like anymore, but like at the time of Stephen Lawrence, obviously it was more of a daily occurrence for them. But personally, have you came across a lot, or now that you have take that way as well? What are you thinking? What it's like?
So I don't really want to like. I thought hard. Like I thought about this question like a lot.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's like kind of like a personal question as well. But like for me, it's like I don't want to like say that I haven't experienced that at all because that's simply not true.
No, no. Of course, yeah.
I definitely have experienced like some racial like slurs or like some racial discrimination and stuff, but like it's just nothing compared to what other people have experienced. For example, like to the degree
Yeah.
as some other people. So for me, like my experience with it is like quite small in comparison, but like at the same time, I don't want to like take all light off of it because it's still like a big deal as well,
Yeah.
no matter how small it is. But yeah, just in comparison, it's just like I'm thankful that I have experienced it to like a degree that like other people have.
Uh-huh.
So
Do you
yeah.
do you think it's got something to do with like the times have changed? Like, obviously we're in 2022 now, so do you think compared to 1993, do you think there's been a change? Like,
Well, yeah, 100%, yeah. Like for right now, like we're at the peak of like what you can call equality, like in the sense of like as you go back in time, it gets worse and worse. Like
Right,
we're
right.
currently like at the peak of where we are currently when it comes to equality, but like you can't like there's always room to improve.
yeah. So
There's always room to
yeah,
improve.
in essence, it isn't really the peak yet, but we're at the highest point we've ever been. in
Yeah,
terms of
exactly,
equality, sort of thing.
exactly. Yeah,
Because I mean, it is constant. Like, there's so much prejudice around the world, like for all sorts of different things. It's constant. It's not. It is constant. Like, it's always there. I think people are always going to have, prejudices and things like that. They're always going to be thinking, and you can't really go against it. You can try to go against it, but it's just difficult. Like, starting a conversation like that, or just uneasy. But that's what the whole point of this radio show has been as well. It's just to like make sure like that conversation can be had and people can kind of understand why it needs to happen. In terms of Stephen Lawrence,
yeah.
who obviously passed away in 1993, and yeah, very unfortunate circumstances what happened to him. How do you feel about like the whole like theory? Like, what do you like kind of know like about Stephen Lawrence in terms of like what have you kind of learned? Like, obviously, because I know you didn't know initially
Yeah.
who he even was, which is why we're also making this, because a lot of people don't know who he is or who he was, and we don't really seem to be that educated on it. But that's why we're doing it today. And yeah, what do you know? What do you kind of
like commonly like even just like doing like basic information like research on the topic, it's just personally it's like a really just tragic way of like basically having to like leave the world and stuff, like
yeah.
like even from the like circumstances of not even provoking and just being in the wrong place at the wrong time type situations, and in the way that like the police even handled it, and like the whole like society at that time handled it, was just like the first time was like a huge eye-opener during that time.
Yeah.
Like, Nelson Mandela also like came to
So that's a fact.
the location as well. Like it was just like take this more seriously. Like someone so iconic having to come down just to like acknowledge the situation, so that everyone else acknowledges it.
That's what's so mad about it. Like the fact that I was shocked to hear Nelson Mandela came over specifically like for that. That kind of puts it into context how bad it was and how little the government.
Yeah, because it wasn't even like 2 years until like anything was done.
Exactly.
Despite the parents even having names of the victims,
Exactly.
victims, no one done anything.
Well, the police did too. The police knew who it was. But a quote from the detective at the time, I believe, watching one of the documentaries. This isn't like an exact quote, but he basically stated that they didn't want to make any arrests because they were teenagers and they'd have to release them in 2 weeks. So it was like they
wanted to deal with it carefully.
They were like
quotations, man.
That's what they were kind of saying, but at the same time, like you look at it and you're like, these guys went to the pub after it happened. Like the kid was bleeding out on the floor. Did not try to like stop the bleeding. Just kind of stood around. You know what I mean? Waited for the ambulance to come. Didn't really do anything. Like there's a whole series of like things that should have been done, and they just kind of weren't done. And it's like kind of sad to see that basically. Yeah, that's sort of my view on it anyway.
Even I'm just going to quickly add like later on in the case. Basically, later on we find out that the group of boys that were basically responsible for his death were literally it was premeditated. Like they literally were together saying racial slurs and
Yeah.
using like knives, like fighting and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and then that was basically like that was before the death, and then it was kind of like pre-seen or something. Like
Yeah.
you can already see the like wave that we were gravitating towards
Yeah.
that happening.
It's like it was premeditated, but like the target wasn't selected. If you look at the case, like Stephen was with one of his friends at the time. It could have been him or it could have been his friend. You know what I mean? It wasn't exactly like they were targeting Stephen. They were just targeting someone of color at the end of the day. It could have been that kind of brings back to your wrong place, wrong time sort of argument. You know what I mean? That could have been anyone at the same time, which is awful to know. But at that time, it became Stephen because, you know what I mean? And it was just unfortunate to hear like that he'd get.
Real quick, I have to like add in like it's now like it's not even like wrong place, wrong time now. It's wrong place, wrong time, wrong color. Like it wasn't even like just anyone could have happened. Only a black person that was at that like location at that time. You know.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy.
That's kind of mental as well, man. The circumstances surrounding it as well. It just kind of gets me every time that I kind of think about it. That's why we're making it, obviously, just kind of like tell people what happened. I must have spoken to like about 60 to 70 people once I heard, and I'm not going to lie to like people. I think I've already mentioned this in other interviews, but I was only kind of told about this like whole Stephen Lawrence thing like a few months ago because, and like I didn't even know. Like nobody had told me, no one had educated me. I mean, I was born like 7 years after it happened, like 2001. So I'm not actually about 7 to 8 years, somewhere in that gap. You know what I mean? It's a bit disappointing to see like I hadn't been educated on it when I hadn't lived through the time, so there was no way I could have known about it. But our educational system has just decided to blatantly ignore it.
Yeah, like
that whole
section in history, like
it's history, and it's like you haven't discussed it at all, like with anybody, and I think that's a bit ridiculous. And I think we need to be doing a lot more in society to like kind of raise awareness about Stephen Lawrence and other cases similar to it, man. There's so much going on in the world that, you know what I mean, we just haven't even been told about, and it's kind of ridiculous to see, in my opinion anyway, how like we just haven't been educated. I mean, there's a case of the guy who was in police custody that died. Obviously, like the police were throwing about a lot of different things. That was a completely different case. I don't know if you heard about that case.
No.
They were like, he had like a heart attack in jail, but like it was a police-induced kind of heart attack because they were like putting pressure on him. They were like throwing things at him, calling him a monkey, this, that. Like those police officers at the time, I don't know what happened to them because I don't have the facts in front of me. Obviously, I'm prepared for Stephen Lawrence to try and chat, but yeah, that's a bit.
But that's still insane. But like even to like push someone to even like mentally and like physically like have a reaction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's disgusting to see, to be honest. And
was this in the UK?
This was in the UK, bro. Not in America. If it's in America, it's weird that I have to say that I'd expect it to happen in America.
In America, yeah.
I couldn't, like, you know what I mean? That's mad. But another point to also make as well, obviously, like, it's all about your, like, yeah, people go through this, but it's nice to have, like, a community around you to kind of discuss this with and be like, yeah, this happened to me the other day. Someone said this to me. Someone said that to me. And that's why I really like what you're doing with, like, the whole, like, drink thing as well. Like, you know what I mean? It feels like a whole cultural, your, like, heritage almost, and you're bringing that out in your sort of produce as well. And you're really, like, promoting that side of things. And
thank you, man.
Telling people about it. You're educating people that didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I mean, I'm an Indian guy, and so I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't know about, like, that whole, like, drink thing. And, like, I mean, I'd let you explain what that's all about and stuff, and, like, what you were kind of thinking. Why did you go with that particular drink over, you know, other forms? Like, you know what I mean, what were you kind of thinking?
Simply, it was just, like, a popular drink, like, from where I was from.
Is that back home? Yeah.
I'm from Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast. Oh, I did not know that. Yeah.
Côte d'Ivoire, let's go.
Côte d'Ivoire, yeah.
So yeah, like near the equator of the world as well. Like it's mostly common, like places like even Egypt and like Nigeria.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like a common drink across the equator. So usually families would just make it for other like family members and stuff. I just saw that it was somewhat like inefficient doing that to also bring the flavor to the UK as well, because no one was actually doing it like when I was first looking at it.
Yeah.
And basically making it like a product that's so affordable it just makes sense to go out and purchase it, knowing that you're also supporting charities as well, instead of making it like by yourself and spending time doing that.
Yeah. No, 100%, man, 100%. This strike is like a huge strike back from Ivory Coast and where you're from and like the culture. Do you sometimes find that like certain people are not that accepting of that drink? You know what I mean? They ask questions that are a little bit like
Yeah.
you should not be asking. Like that's a little bit like weird. Like why are you saying that type of thing? So I get that all the time, but I'll explain that after your answer.
Yeah. Yeah, like for sure, like for example, like the main ingredients as well. Like some people are like, oh, what's hibiscus? Like, because that's the main ingredient for Besad. And then I'm just like trying to explain to them like all the like nutritional benefits of actual like hibiscus and stuff. But in this society in the UK, it's mostly used as a tea. So
Oh,
for example, like Starbucks does like a hibiscus tea, which is like a cold brew of hibiscus, and it's completely different from what basically we're making. And other things like ginger, for example, they just don't like the gingery flavor of the drink.
Okay.
They just simply think it's like too strong. But then again, that's like their own preference.
Yeah,
We're just not used to
that's
it.
more so preference.
From where I'm from, we almost always have it like
Okay.
a stronger version. Like
Oh,
I
stronger than that.
had to also like dial it back because
Yeah.
I need to like
I mean, it's your market though, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's more of a marketing thing. I mean, I guess you could, as you expand, like, because obviously you'll have people that can't handle it. It's like spice level of like, see, like, obviously being from India, like, I look at like certain foods, I'm like, this is nowhere near as strong or
Exactly.
spicy this week. And then maybe in future you could be like, I'm gonna make another version of this that is stronger. And then I assume that's in your plan.
It's
though.
down the line, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably you're a smart guy. So
Yeah,
sorry, you've got that
literally.
planned out though. Yeah, no, look forward to seeing that as well, man. When times come along for that. Yeah, no, it's class. And yeah, I was going to explain that as well from my sort of point of view. So the reason I kind of asked you that question is because sometimes I'll find like culturally I'll get asked questions that are a little bit. This doesn't apply to your drink as well. You can talk about a lot of other things here. Like culturally, I'll get asked questions that are a little bit like, what? Like, how can you ask me that? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I used to get like a lot of like religious ones like that. Like, oh, why do you do that? Like, why do you act like that? Like,
yeah. Personally, right, it's through indirect ignorance. So say for example, like I was with like some white friends, right?
Yeah.
And they for some reason know a black artist, and they come up to me and be like, how do you not know this artist?
Seriously?
Expecting me to like know this artist, know
That's
this
mad.
particular song. It happens more frequently with for example, like a bonnet. Like what basically like I don't want to just say it's African, like an African thing, but basically it's what girls will basically wear for like after they go to a shower to basically dry their hair.
Yeah.
They put on the bonnet, and apparently society thinks that's like well, it technically is like an African thing, right?
Yeah.
But like since for an African person not to like know the name of it like off the top of their head, because I remember one day I was like having a conversation with someone, and it was a quick thing. Like I wasn't overthinking about the name and stuff. I was like, oh, what's the thing that's on that person's head? I mean, the response was like, how do you not know a bonnet? Like, or even black, you know?
Seriously?
Things like that. It's like being like indirectly like ignorant of the situation. Like it does just because I'm not like sure of the English word of a particular item.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make me less who I am, you know?
I think that's a bit ridiculous, man.
That's insane.
That sounds a bit ridiculous. Yeah, like I get it all the time. Like I used to more so in primary school. Like I guess that's maybe a kid's mind, like asking questions.
Yeah.
Like you used to get all the questions like, oh, why do you have dot on your head? Why do you what's your feel of you? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even at the time.
It's ignorance, man.
It's ignorance.
Like, they just don't know like what they're talking about, and then they just asking these questions without doing their own research. Like you have to do your own research if you want to be in the side of asking more questions. Like if you haven't went out your way to find out the basic information, you are not in the position to basically like go out and find further information. You know?
Yeah. So, I agree. I think ignorance itself is an okay thing because I think we're all a little bit ignorant about certain things. You can't really help that. But it's when you're ignorant and then you fail to educate yourself about it and then perceive certain things and then try to make those notions known.
Mm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know something, and like you'll make that known to people that you don't know that, but you're still
Yeah.
gonna make assumptions about that thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like you shouldn't be coming across like that. You know what I mean? As an individual, I'm not really that. I don't really have any examples off the top of my head where like I've done that myself. I tend to like not really. I try to avoid cultural questions on people,
Mm.
but that tends to make me a little bit like more like. Sometimes I won't know what I'm talking about though with like certain people. Like for example yourself, like Ivory Coast. Like,
Yeah.
culturally, like I don't really know a lot about the Ivory Coast, and maybe if I was going to ask you certain questions, I'd have to like research about the Ivory Coast, like what's appropriate to ask you about the Ivory Coast. You know what I mean? Because that's maybe just a conversation that needs to happen across the board. Like obviously Ivory Coast itself, and that is a different topic. But like when it comes to like people like refugees and stuff coming here, and then people are just assuming that they're all one way. They're all like
Yeah.
very much like. You know what I mean? It's the assumptions that people make that kind of get me,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because people tend to make a lot of assumptions about, people like refugees, and in the case of Stephen Lawrence, they made a lot of assumptions as well. Like the people that attacked him anyway, like they made a lot of assumptions, didn't they?
Were people thinking he was a refugee? Like,
No, they weren't. No, it's nothing to do with him being a refugee.
Oh,
like
okay,
as in
okay.
assumptions about him.
Assumptions. Okay. Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like racially, they were like
Thinking that he was. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? They put him down that line that they already thought like all black people were, and they didn't take the minute to like actually get to know the boy. Like you know what I mean? They didn't
Yeah,
ask
exactly,
him questions.
yeah.
They were like, he's another black guy. I know what they're all like. I'm gonna go meet him. They didn't know that he had his own. The guy had his own T-shirt business from the age of 16. He was gonna become an architect. You know what I mean? He was into his like design and stuff, and they didn't. You know what I mean? They didn't care, and that's sadly something we can't really see of Stephen Lawrence. You know what I mean? We'll never know what he would have been able to achieve through his artistic sort of impressions, which is a bit unfortunate. It's such a sad thing to see, like life cut like that. You know what I mean? And
I need to add like even the fact that like if basically like Stephen wasn't like doing all these amazing things with his life, trying to get somewhere with his life.
Yeah.
It still doesn't justify the fact that even happened initially. It's one thing that's like he was like hustling and basically working hard to achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to happen, it's another thing that it shouldn't be another thing, I should say, for him not to be hustling and still wanting to live his life.
Exactly, man. And it's just sad to see it. It's a lot of like I've had a lot of questions about this, but I think it's actually more so the government's implicated in it in like a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like not just afterwards. Everybody that I seem to chat to just thinks that it's the government's fault for after it happened, like how they dealt with it, which is true.
Exactly.
Which is true. However, it's the government's fault that those guys ended up thinking the way that they did in the first place, in my opinion anyway. Because that's a level of uneducatedness that the government hasn't provided to them. The government hasn't provided them with the educatedness to understand anything about, BAME people, black people. They were fueled on hatred, which inadvertently was misdirected at Stephen Lawrence. But if you look at it, like their hatred for their own lives and what they were kind of going through themselves was actually because of the government, right? Would you not? I don't know if you'd agree with that, but like the fact that they financially couldn't afford things and that made them more angry. You know what I mean? They were angry at the fact that their life quality was so poor that they wanted to take it out on Stephen Lawrence because they thought, oh, black people coming over here stealing my jobs, my money, my housing, blah blah blah. And in reality, it's the government that's failing to provide those facilities, but they're able to shift the blame on the minority at the time anyway, and I still think that exists in society. You know what I mean? We see a lot of that, like refugees at the minute get a lot of the blame because of like, oh, they're stealing our jobs, our housing, blah blah. But when you look at it, like they're very like, you know what I mean, in society they're like such a small part of it, and like Brexit happened purely on racism, and I know a lot of people will come around and say, no, that's not the case. That's not true. But I mean, look at it. Britain itself is a fundamentally racist place. Like for you to decide that you want to cut people coming into this country based off jobs and stuff with like, you know what I mean? I think it's ridiculous in my opinion. Like the way that way. I know that's a completely different topic.
Yeah, but no, I can definitely see.
In terms of fundamental racism,
yeah, fundamental.
like,
yeah,
it's not outright racism. Like no one's coming up to me in the street and
Just
calling me these words, but fundamentally, society itself is still very much racist. And the whole Brexit thing kind of proves that was only in what 2017, 2018.
Mm.
That was 4 years ago, 4 years ago, man, and that's how they were acting then. And Stephen Lawrence 1993, so it would have been even worse when he was around in terms of how like upfront that racism is. But I just think I feel like racism can be compared to like an iceberg in essence. Like you only see so much of it, but society itself is still, you know what I mean, it's still below the sea level. Like you're with an iceberg, it's like 75% below the water. It's similar to that. Like the racism's there. Like it's
for sure. Like it's definitely more ingrained into society. Like especially if you have like a racist like society as a whole.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be abnormal for one person to act a different way during that time. Say, for example, if all of your friends, your colleagues were like basically racist towards a particular group, you'll want to like stay within this social norm. So in that sense, yes, systematically it would be like a racist system. However, like back to what you were saying with what it's called, government basically mostly being reliable for what happened. I do agree with what you said as well. However, like I still want to put like a bigger emphasis on the fact that like it was them still doing it, despite how angry or like how frustrated you are. You're the one that still went out your way to basically racially assault and to murder someone. You know, no one's controlling you, puppeteering you to do that.
Yeah.
So, just want to like emphasize that a little bit as well.
But yeah. No,
you're definitely right. Like it's systematic.
100%.
Wasn't it in fact like a judge, like one of the court cases, a judge literally came to a conclusion that the police system is systematically racist.
Yeah, it was in the report
Yeah.
that they decided that it was concluded that it was systematic racism.
Yeah.
There was supposedly a lot of threatening going on within the police establishment as well.
Mhm.
A lot of covering up of knowledge. I mean, the police itself, racist, not really that surprising. Society itself being racist at the time, again, not surprising. It's just the part that always gets me. Obviously, you were saying like these guys didn't do it themselves. They actually did the killing, right? But in my head, it's like society kind of left the knife there for them to use. If that makes sense. Like yes, they didn't kill them, but they left them there with all the tools and the hatred and all the justifications that they thought they needed to go and do that killing, kind of sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's still like a big issue as well. Like I said that not to like shine away from what you said.
No, I know what you mean.
Like,
but like I was just kind of making my point more clear, just in case people thought like those people that did it like deserve less like hatred or like less of the, you know what I mean, less of the scrutiny that they received. At the end of the day, they deserve everything that came their way. Like they didn't actually get enough going their way, which again is another thing with society being racist. But
it's,
yeah.
For like an analogy, right?
For an analogy, yeah.
For people also listening, it's like you leave the cookie inside a room with a baby, you know,
kind of thing. Yeah. It's
and
like
you don't think the baby's gonna go eat it.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like a fundamental thing, right? It's like the way you've structured society from the minute they were born to the minute like they are at that age where they've gone and done that. That's society's upbringing of the kid, right? Okay. And it's their parents as well, but if you look at how their parents were raised, it's just a massive like, what's like dominoes, like that just kind of keep going. They keep knocking each other over. It's the same sort of thing here. It's like the dominoes keep knocking each other over. It's all ingrained within society, and that's just the way that it was for them. Like they had, you know what I mean? They probably went to school and they went and they called people, you know, racial slurs on the regular. They weren't told off for them. You know what I mean? Like that's society, bro, right there. And it's like the news titles, the press, you know, it's all geared towards hating these minority people for things that had nothing to do with them. And that's sadly still the case today as well, in my opinion. I feel like a lot of news articles now are still, geared against minorities, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's ridiculous. Like some of like the news titles we see, and I'm like, this is outrageous the way that you've described it. The ones that always get me right, if it's like a Muslim guy or like a black guy, he's a terrorist. But then as soon as it's like a white guy, like they'll change the title. I don't know if you've noticed this, but next time you see like a white gunman do something racially motivated,
Yeah.
like the guy that killed everybody, killed not everybody, but he killed like about 200 people in Norway. He wasn't referred to as a terrorist, but he was referred to as somebody who was like a psychopath killing. When the killings were clearly racially motivated,
Bro, like
they
that
changed it completely.
Yeah.
Like the guy was a racist. He did it for terrorism, but you wouldn't call him a terrorism in your headlines. You would call him a psychopath. Like, yeah, obviously he was a psychopath, yes, but he was still a terrorist. But you know what I mean? They won't call when the guy's a white guy killing people, they'll refuse to call him a terrorist. But as soon as he's like a brown or a black guy, the guy's a terrorist, even though it's
just automatic labeling it like at that point as well.
Yeah, it's like, you know what I mean? It's always the wording in the titles. That's what people don't see, and I think that's what we need to talk a lot more about. It's like the way things are worded in certain news articles as well. It's like it's a small part of obviously like a big thing, but it is still something that needs to be kind of talked about as well.
Even to like just simply standardize like the classification of what is a terrorist, what is someone that's like psychologically like unstable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it shouldn't be based upon color of skin and stuff. Like it should just be a flat universal standardization of it. Exactly. Was this person racially motivated? Yes. Okay, it was a racist attack.
Yeah, you know? I mean, it's kind of like in America when you see people like, you know, I mean, you see certain supporters of like right-wing groups, they'll perform an attack, and they'll just, you know, I mean, they won't call the guy a terrorist, but when the whole reason he's just ran over, like during the demonstrations in was it Charleston? There was a guy ran over like about 3 to 4 people. 3 to 4 people were killed. The guy ran over into a crowd, right, with his car. But media there would still not call that terrorism.
I think I remember that something.
But
no, awful event.
Like, awful event, bro. It's dreadful. But like at the end of the day, their media decided, okay, this isn't actually terrorism. But in reality, it is terrorism. But that's the definition of terrorism: is to make someone scared to leave their house. There's like so much like Grenfell Tower as well. That's something that needs to be spoken about a lot, and it does now. We do speak a lot about Grenfell Tower, but that I think is a huge like example of our racism within society, because with like in this case, right, the guy got killed by 5, 6 like guys in an outright racist attack. Grenfell Tower was institutional racism because they knew they had majority minorities in there, but it was like a ticking time bomb. Like they knew what it was capable of, what could happen because of the cladding, but they didn't want to reinvest in it. They didn't want to make it safer because it's not white lives, is it? So let's just let it happen. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but let's not prepare that if it does happen. You know what I mean?
Just they just don't see us being worth investing into. You know,
bro. That's effectively what it is. Yeah,
it's even insane if I were like, for someone to even justify like basically how much money like it would reasonably be, like for example from like an investing standpoint, before you even invest you need to make it make sense, right?
Yeah.
For someone to then put a number on that many people's lives, you know, and basically be like, nah, it's not enough. Like it doesn't make sense. Investing this amount does not make sense to protect X amount of lives. Someone please do the maths to make that make sense. You know?
Exactly.
Insane.
How do you think, like as a society, that we can kind of like prevent things like Stephen Lawrence happening again? What's our next play? How do we make society more equal in 2022?
But people literally just have to be more aware, you know?
Yeah.
Stop being ignorant to different situations. Like actually do your research. You know, don't go out. Like it's fine for you to be curious, you know. You can ask your fellow friends or someone how they do things, how they live their life. But you just blatantly, again, like what you said from before, make assumptions.
So like, if someone is curious, what do you think is the best way that they can ask you that question? Because there'll be a lot of people listening to this are like, okay, I'm curious about your culture. You know, they're curious about my culture, for example. What do you think is the best way they can pose me questions about my culture?
try and break the ice. To be honest, like it's like some random person coming up to you and talking to you about like some deep level, like
Yeah, that's a
heavy
bit mad.
stuff.
Yeah,
You
wouldn't
know,
expect that. I wouldn't expect
you
that.
just wouldn't expect that.
Let's say like a friend then, maybe. Someone that you know, someone that's like close to you. Do you think they could ask you questions like that
I mean,
might come a little bit ignorant? Like, what's your opinion on that? Would you be okay with them asking certain?
I mean, I keep my friends close, man. Like,
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you
small
mean.
circle of friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, with my friends, like, if they want to like know anything, I'm really open to just like tell them. However, unless if they come in asking me questions with ready assumptions, like they already have a belief or like some idea of like some incorrect ideas
Yeah.
of how something works or why something happens.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to like argue, going back and forth. Like you're the one that's coming over here to basically ask for information,
Right. Okay.
and I'm gonna answer them the
Right.
best I can for you, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm gonna try and lead you the wrong way and try to give you false information. You can basically try and like, you can kind of argue with it, but at the end of the day, it's like not arguing with it. Like it's the answer that you wanted, and here it is. You know.
Right. Okay.
But-
I know that makes sense, man.
But yeah, just be sensitive about it. You know, because
Sensitive, yeah.
you don't want to like offend the person that you're talking to. You know?
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I do fully agree with that. But like, I did see this. I saw this Google ad actually, and it was like, "Don't be afraid to Google questions."
Mm.
And I guess like maybe that's something that people could look at. You know, people listening who, if you've got questions about cultures, you know, what I mean, the internet's a beautiful place.
Exactly.
Like,
just do your basic.
that's
diligence.
I mean, you did make the point.
Yeah,
Doing your
yeah.
research.
Yeah,
That
just
does
do
come
your
under
own
that.
basic research. Like we're not expecting you to know everything.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. It. Like if you've got certain things you're interested about, like ask. Like, you know what I mean? Don't come around and ask me like, oh, why do you all wear like really fancy clothing and light fireworks on Diwali? You know what I mean? Like go and just go and Google that. Don't ask me that question. Like, you know what I mean?
It's even like with religion as well. Like if you're trying to figure out something with like someone's religion,
Yeah.
you don't basically just like go to them and just try and like debunk everything that they say and say like,
Yeah, man.
but why do you think that happens? Why do you think this? Nah, like you do your own research. This is what internet's telling you. Then you probably go to them and tell them like, what do you think about X, Y, Z? You ask for their opinion. You do not ask them whether or not they should justify their like opinion. You know?
Exactly, man. And it's like it was like living in Glasgow, right? I see a lot of like Protestant versus like Christianity, sort of like there's a whole culture of that here. Like obviously it goes, it's very deep rooted. That's its own form of prejudice.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board. But I had so many questions being like a Hindu, like Indian guy. I was like, what does that mean? Why do you guys like do this? But I wasn't, the way that I kind of handled that situation was, I was like, look, I'm just going to go do a little bit of research. Let me find out exactly why things are like this.
Yeah.
Like, what's your history between you two? Like, why are things like this? And then I can maybe ask some questions to certain people.
Yeah.
Like, I asked them mainly like through my research. I'm usually like telling them like, oh, I was kind of curious about this and I researched it, and there was a website that said this, and is that correct? And do you have a further explanation?
That's a
for this?
perfect way of doing it.
And I think that's the best way. Like people listening, obviously,
Perfect way,
like
man.
that is the best way. If you have a question about someone else's culture, that is the best way to kind of go about it, because that way you're not. It helps because it's like, okay, so he's done his research, so he does actually care about it. He's asked me about it in a pretty polite way, so he kind of knows about the topic already, but he just wants an explanation about certain points, and then you can kind of lead on from that. And I think that's the best way to go about doing that anyway.
By also asking it the way you just explained it, you're basically opening up the doors whereby like, this is not a back and forth thing. I'm here to listen to you.
Yeah.
Like I'm here to listen to your opinion.
Uh-huh.
One thing that I personally like live my life by is like, if you're finding yourself going against someone's opinion, you know you're wrong. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
If someone's saying personally, I think of this, you can try and like convince them not, but you cannot tell them that what you're thinking is wrong, like type thing. You try and convince them. You can't blatantly tell them you are wrong. You cannot think like this, because you don't know, you can't understand what's going through their mind and like why they reach that conclusion. we reached that conclusion for a reason.
We need to start having
So-
that conversation across the board, just like to kind of understand, even people that like I would theoretically put in the category of being racist, like those people, like while they are, they do sound naive and they do sound like undereducated, like they do have a point of view. Like there's a thought process there. in the
Yeah,
back of their
exactly.
head.
But like,
There's a reason they
yeah.
think like that, and I think we need to kind of understand why they think like that
exactly.
to kind of then dismantle why they think like that. We can't just tell them you're a racist, you're wrong, because then that just makes them feel
It feels like they're attacked. Like
you've just attacked. You have
just
effectively, yeah.
exactly. You have attacked them, and what do normal like humans do? They try and defend themselves.
Defend themselves,
You know,
and then they will defend.
You don't want to be labeled as something that you personally don't think is like wrong in that like scenario. However, like if you then try to like, I'm not gonna try and like justify someone being racist to someone and then try and like negotiate with them.
100%,
No,
100%.
just like they need to go away from themselves, like by themselves, and figure out why themselves they're thinking in this particular way.
Yeah.
Like,
100%, man.
all like black people just like there to like attack them. No. Or all black people just there to like steal all the jobs. No. Like it's just any like ethnic group as well. Like it's just like, are these people genuinely just there to just be a burden on their life, whereby they need to like show hatred,
Yeah, exactly, man.
I'm telling you, 100% of the time, it's not the case. Like,
yeah,
it's just not. And
I
then that's
agree.
what they need to do by themselves.
I agree, man. Actually, I fully agree with that point. And so I'm just going to ask you a couple questions just about like what's coming in the future, sort of thing. Like what you've kind of got like going on. Like
But I have a lot of things going on.
I know. That's why it's so interesting to talk to you. Like what? Like okay, let's split this then. What's next year? Right. So we're in what, April now.
Okay.
April 2023, what's going to have happened in life that hasn't happened yet? Like, what's coming in the next year?
Gonna try and get a brewery for Project Best App.
Whoa.
That's something that's on the bucket list, but obviously
Yeah,
we need
man.
a lot of initial investment.
Yeah, capital, I can imagine it's going to need to be huge, but
Also
to be honest
with,
with you, I'm sure you could manage that. Like, knowing
I mean, we're slowly working. We're slowly working towards it.
I'm certain you manage it.
Alongside that, with schooling, basically my first company, trying
course,
to get
yeah.
a couple schools involved with that, and
Okay. How many companies do you have now? What's the
two now.
two companies then? Yeah, two companies.
Well,
Amazing.
Yeah,
And remind the people what age you are.
I'm 19 right now.
19 years old. This guy's got two companies. Don't tell me this guy's gonna go places, man. Two companies, brewery.
Thank you.
By the age of 20, you're gonna own a brewery. Like,
That's a goal.
lad, like
That's a goal.
that's mad. I think that is mental. Like, that's gonna be mad when that happens, obviously. And I mean, people like that want to keep up with him. Obviously, you can get at him through his like the Instagram on Project Bitter and stuff. You can kind of check that all out, and we'll attach all the links down below for anybody
Bless.
who wants to know more about what's coming, like, because it's interesting, man, what's going to come through with that, like,
Thank you,
definitely.
man. Yeah.
And then so that's in a year, obviously, but like, what do you see yourself in the long game then? What's 10 years down the line? That's a long way away, obviously. I mean,
Bro.
like, what's like, there must be some big vision stuff, obviously, 'cause even for like myself, I kind of know where, like, I don't know where I want to be. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, but I kind of know where I'd want to kind of be in 10 years. What have you got kind of?
So the bigger picture, right? It's something that I typically don't really actually share with anyone. I kind of keep it to myself because it's more like a personal goal.
100%, man. I agree. Yeah. If it's,
Even with like two different companies, but like the two companies are like integrated in the way whereby like education is huge.
Yeah.
Schooling, the platform, is all about education and self help and try to get students to better themselves by themselves, right?
Yeah.
Whilst Project Best App is also about like basically sharing cultural ingredients, cultural beliefs, and cultural like events with people who are like supporting the brand, and also helping charities as well with the education sector in developing countries. So again, like education is like the common ground. So yeah, in the distant future, but hopefully not distant future, but it's gonna be something to do with charities and like helping
of course
developing countries with education. That's where I kind of want to like point my moral compass to. So
that's amazing. Like that be, you could really do some good there with like that. Like, it's a really strong point as well. You know what I mean? Really helping out, like, because I don't think we understand how privileged we are, like in the UK. Like, yeah, we can talk about racism and stuff, and that's
So
cool.
true.
Like, it's something that we still have to kind of go with. It's like racism doesn't even like matter because they're struggling to put like money on the table and food like on the table, that they have to just put up with it, because if they don't put up with it, then they're just gonna lose out. You know what I mean? And it's
The fact that like society right now, we have so much things going on.
yeah, like we can like sit here and we can talk about racism, like Stephen Lawrence, like what happened to him and how that affects us now today. Like,
Yeah,
we're privileged enough to be like allowed like into the spaces like this and be able to have those conversations across
for sure.
society. But like, there's places where they can't do that because they can't talk, they can't have a political voice. You know what I mean?
Oh, bro, like even the fact that I honestly deep first, because obviously for me, like I come from like a really technical technology background, right? In the last 50 years, being able to even have access to like data like this,
Yeah,
where literally like as soon as something happens halfway across the world, we're able to have like full documentation of like what happened, what's the
yeah,
result instantly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Especially like in the first world countries, less so in the developing countries. But it's just like insane to even have that, like
Right.
that different and that like different cases of basically developing and also like first world, like where everyone in the first world country, you will literally be able to like go to anywhere, look at a TV, get
Yeah.
some news update, and
Okay.
educate yourself in some information.
Yeah, yeah.
Whilst in a developing country, like it's not even there yet. Like
Uh-huh.
in some places,
Yeah, yeah.
we
I
still
know.
need to like work hard to just even be aware of these information. Leave alone be able to even understand with the education sector.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like education factor, sorry. So basically, they need to be able to like one, be able to understand the language, read or write in the language, to then be able to have access to the information. So they have a bigger barrier to this. So it's just insane, man. Like from that like time period of everything basically changing. So
Yeah. I mean, that's bro. It's actually mad. Like how lucky we are in this country and what we have. Like, I don't think enough people understand. Not enough people are grateful, to be honest with you. It's a huge.
No
one's that grateful for what they have, and it kind of shows in society because everybody's more like, it's weird. I feel like everybody's more angry and more like sad now. You know what I mean? Generally across the board, even being the Movember rep, I kind of see like a lot of it. The whole Movember point as well is just like because we're just struggling. You know what I mean? We're struggling to talk. That's obviously a men's mental health thing. Men are struggling to talk.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know what I mean? There's places in the world where men, if they can't talk like that,
Exactly.
they can't express themselves like that in any sort of way, and we're just not that grateful for being able to like show people what we're about and have conversations like with family, friends, like, oh, I'm struggling. You can't. There's places you can't tell people you're struggling mentally. Like,
exactly. Like
they'd laugh. You know what I mean? They'd laugh.
It's seen as something like a little bit taboo-ish. Where like, oh wait, you guys actually feel like you're struggling type thing from like the opposite like basic gender and stuff. But like at the same time, it's like guys struggle as much as girls struggles. Like we find it just difficult to like basically show it.
Yeah.
Other hand, like other forms of it would just be like showing anger instead.
Yeah.
You just naturally feel angry about the situation whereby it's something that you can't control. Of course, like even with anyone, you'll feel angry about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Instead of actually talking to someone about it, because you just don't feel comfortable in doing so. So
yeah, man, it's mental like how that is. Yeah, Isaac, we're coming up to like almost an hour now, man. Been amazing chat to you. So like, Isaac, we'll ask you like, what's like, not final statement, obviously. We got like a lot more to hear from you in the future, but like closing remarks, man. Like anything you want to like kind of tell the world. You got huge. Isaac, for those who don't know, really helped put this together as well. You know what I mean? In terms of like videographers.
Bro, this is all you. Come on.
A few acts on this mix as well that I got connected to through him. So, big up him, man. you've really helped with this. And
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
if you've got any closing remarks, man, love to hear them. What have you got to say then? Anything last to say? Of Stephen Lawrence, anything you want to say?
I mean, focus on what you actually want to do with your life. No one's just gonna give you handouts. You're literally gonna have to go get it.
Yeah.
Like.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's, and like understand like you're in a position right now where life, I don't know like obviously your exact position. You're the only person that knows where you exactly are, but like look at someone like Stephen Lawrence. Guy was 18 years old. 1 year younger than Isaac, 2 years younger than me. Guy got killed. That was his life cut short right then and there. And while you're here, push for what you want. Like don't not push for what you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Don't put up with things that you don't have to put up with.
Exactly.
Like and really go for it, and if you're putting up with racism, don't take it.
You don't need to.
You don't have to take it anymore, man. And
you're not going to.
No, you won't. We're here to try to make sure you won't. But like you're in society, man, you've got one chance, man. You need to really go for it. And love that final point, man. Yeah, thanks Isaac for hopping on the show, man. Being class. Perfect, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yes. Thank you. Oh, pause the studio.
That was really good.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you for not answering really difficult questions.
So like after I wasn't that difficult.
I think it flowed really well.
Oh yeah, it did. So what we'll do?
Amazing. Do this every single week, yeah?
Yeah. Chris, I want to start.
I'll co-host with you.
I want to start my own radio show after this is done. We'll start one. This will be like a special.
You put me into it now, like, I'm hidden.